In the heart of 19th century Australia, when the colonies were still young and society was struggling to define itself, one man's life carved itself into legend. His name was Edward Ned Kelly, and his story is remembered as one of hardship, rebellion, defiance, and tragedy. To some, he remains a ruthless outlaw who murdered policemen. To others, he was a folk hero who fought against a corrupt and oppressive system. More than a century later, his name still sparks debate, and his tale echoes with questions of justice, freedom, and the line between hero and villain. Ned Kelly was born in December 1854 in the small town of Beveridge, north of Melbourne. His father, John "Red" Kelly, had been transported from Ireland as a convict, a man shaped by poverty and British punishment. His mother, Ellen Quinn, was a strong-willed Irish woman who would become a defining figure in Ned's life. The Kelly family lived in poverty, scraping a living from harsh land, their name always carrying suspicion in the eyes of the law. Ned was the third of 8 children, and from the beginning, survival meant skirting the boundaries of the law. When Ned was just 12 years old, tragedy struck. His father, weakened by years of hard labor, illness, and heavy drinking, died. Ellen was left alone to raise her children in a society that gave little mercy to the poor. She relied on her wits, her resilience, and sometimes a legal trade just to keep the family alive. Like many Irish settlers, the Kellys faced constant harassment from the police and the wealthy landowners who controlled vast stretches of Victoria. For families like theirs, life was a daily reminder of injustice. By his teenage years, Ned was already well known to authorities. At 14, he was arrested for assaulting a Chinese hawker, though the details remain unclear. Soon after, he was accused of horse theft, one of the most serious crimes in the colony. Whether guilty or not, these charges hardened his view of the police. Each encounter taught him that the law was not there to protect people like him, but to defend the powerful against the poor. At 16, Ned fell under the influence of the infamous Bushranger Harry Power. With power, he learned how to survive in the bush, how to evade police, and how to live outside society's rules. Though he soon separated from power, the lessons remained. Whispers spread that Ned had betrayed power to the police, though he always denied it. What is certain is that the young Kelly came out of that apprenticeship wary, proud, and determined to walk his own path. By the late 1870s, tensions between the Kelly family and the police had reached breaking point. The Kellys were watched closely, targeted with arrests and accusations. The turning point came in April 1878, when Constable Alexander Fitzpatrick arrived at the Kelly home. He claimed to be arresting Dan Kelly for horse theft, but accounts of what followed differ wildly. Fitzpatrick later alleged that Ned shot at him and that Ellen Kelly struck him with a shovel. The Kellys denied the claims, but the incident gave police what they wanted, an excuse to strike hard. Ellen Kelly was arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison. For Ned, this was unforgivable. With his mother behind bars and police determined to hunt him down, he fled into the bush with Dan, joined by their friends Joe Byrne and Steve Hart. Together, they became the Kelly Gang. Outlawed and relentlessly pursued, the young men struck back. In October 1878, at Stringybark Creek, they ambushed a party of policemen sent to capture them. In a violent confrontation, 3 officers were killed. The colony was shocked. Ned Kelly was now the most wanted man in Australia. Posters offering rewards for his capture were nailed to posts and walls across Victoria. To many, he was a cold-blooded murderer. But to others, especially poor Irish settlers, he became a hero, a symbol of resistance against police oppression. Supporters sheltered the gang, feeding them, hiding them, and passing on intelligence. In return, Ned painted himself as more than an outlaw. In December 1878, he dictated the Jerilderie Letter to Joe Byrne, a defiant 56-page manifesto. In it, he raged against police corruption and the oppression of the poor, recounting years of harassment and demanding justice. It remains one of the most important documents in Australian history, both a cry of anger and a declaration of identity. Over the next 2 years, the Kelly Gang carried out bold raids that stunned the colony. They robbed the Euroa Bank in 1878 and Jerilderie in 1879, seizing money, burning mortgage documents, and humiliating police. These raids were not simply about wealth. They were staged as acts of rebellion. Ned wanted to strike blows against a system he believed was corrupt, and in doing so, he won admiration from many struggling settlers. Stories of his defiance spread through newspapers, turning him into a folk legend. But the law was determined to bring him down. In June 1880, the saga reached its climax at the small town of Glenrowan. The gang planned a desperate scheme: derail a police train and slaughter everyone on board. To carry it out, they seized the Glenrowan Inn, taking dozens of townspeople hostage. In preparation, they revealed their most infamous creation: suits of iron armor, forged from plowshares. Heavy and awkward, but nearly bulletproof, the armor made them appear like figures from another age, ghostly, terrifying, and unforgettable. But on the night of June 27th, police surrounded the inn. A long and bloody siege began, gunfire shaking the walls and setting the building ablaze. At dawn, Ned Kelly emerged from the mist in his iron helmet and breastplate. Bullets rang against the armor as he fired back, striding through smoke and chaos like an unearthly warrior. Witnesses described him as unstoppable, almost supernatural. For half an hour, he held off the police, but his legs, left unprotected, were struck by bullets. Wounded and exhausted, Ned collapsed. The siege ended in tragedy. Joe Byrne was killed, Dan Kelly and Steve Hart perished inside the burning inn, and the dream of victory was reduced to ash. Ned was captured alive, but broken. His trial in Melbourne that October was a sensation. Crowds gathered, newspapers blazed with debate. To some, he was a murderer beyond redemption. To others, he was the voice of the oppressed. In the courtroom, Ned remained defiant. He told the judge, "If my lips teach the public that men are made mad by bad treatment, then my life will not be in vain." The verdict was inevitable: guilty of murder. He was sentenced to hang. On November 11th, 1880, in the old Melbourne jail, Ned Kelly faced the gallows. He was just 25 years old. His final words, remembered by witnesses, were haunting in their simplicity: "Such is life." Yet death was not the end of Ned Kelly's story. In many ways, it was the beginning. Songs, poems, and paintings celebrated him. Plays and later films carried his story across the world. His iron mask became one of the most enduring symbols of Australian history. Generations have argued over him: villain, hero, criminal, or freedom fighter. Even now, more than 140 years later, Ned Kelly remains larger than life. He was a mirror held up to a young nation, reflecting its struggles with class, justice, and identity. His story endures because it was never just about one man. It was about a society wrestling with itself. He was both outlaw and symbol, both killer and folk hero, both man and myth. And as long as Australia remembers its past, the shadow of Ned Kelly will always ride through its history.